Bhagavata Swamin iti namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Praschatya Deshatarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivashadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Welcome to our morning glorification of Srīmad Bhāgavatam. We are reading from Canto 10, Chapter 10, Deliverance of Yamala-arjuna Tree, and we are up to verse 15 today. So, SB 10.10.15. Daridro nirham stambho mukta sarva maderiha kricham yadracha apnoti tat aditasya paramam tapa. Daridro nirham stambho mukta sarva maderiha kricham yadricha noti tadati tasya param tapa. Daridra nirham stambho muktam sarva maderiha kricham yadricha apnoti tadati tasya param tapa. Synonyms: Daridra, a poverty-stricken person. Nira aham stambha, is automatically freed from all false prestige. Muktaha, liberated. Sarva, all. Madei, from false ego. Iha, in this world. Kricharam, with great difficulty. Yadracha apnoti, what he gains by chance from the providence. Tat, that. He, indeed. Tasya, his. Param, perfect. Tapaha, austerity. Translation by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. A poverty-stricken man must automatically undergo austerities and penances because he does not have the wealth to possess anything. Thus, his false prestige is vanquished. Always in the need of food, shelter, and clothing, he must be satisfied with what is obtained by the mercy of providence. Undergoing such compulsory austerity is good for him because this purifies him and completely frees from false ego. Would anyone like to read the purport, please?
Harekrishna, Mataji, can I read it?
Yeah, sure, Mataji.
A saintly person voluntarily accepts a state of poverty just to become free from material false prestige. Many great kings left their princely standard of living and went to the forest to practice austerity, according to Vedic culture, just to become purified. But if one who cannot voluntarily accept such austerity is put into a situation of poverty, he automatically must practice austerity. Austerity is good for everyone because it frees one from material conditions. Therefore, if one is very much proud of his material position, putting him into poverty is the best way to rectify his foolishness. Daridrya dosho guna rashi nashi. When a person is poverty-stricken, naturally his false pride in aristocracy, wealth, education, and beauty is smashed. Thus corrected, he is in the right position for liberation. Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Thank you so much, Mataji. So we are reading from Canto 10, Chapter 10, and we are discussing verse 15. So we are discussing Damodar Lila, and we are in the second half of the pastime, where Nalakuvera and Manigriva will be cursed by Narad Muni due to their disrespectful behavior towards him. Narad Muni's intention here is to purify them through curse, and thus he starts speaking from verse 8 onwards. So the learning from these verses so far is that the pride in wealth leads to loss of sense control, and that will eventually lead to the violence. Now, while poverty-stricken condition or a poverty works as a counteraction. How? So in poverty-stricken condition, one generally suffers from hunger, shelter, clothing, etc., which are the basic needs for survival. And when one cannot satisfy even the basics, the false prestige that he or she has due to the identification with Janma, Aishwarya, Shruta, Shribi, aristocracy, wealth, education, and beauty, that prestige is smashed, the false ego is smashed. That's what Prabhupada mentions in the purport. And in that situation, he gains the sense control. And with the sense control, there will be cessation from all sorts of violence, and then one is completely dependent upon the will of the providence. And that actually creates the right platform to do bhakti. Because as we have heard time and again many times, that humility is the basic rudimentary requirement in order to perform a bhakti. So all undergoing through all these poverty-stricken conditions, one actually bring them to the platform of humility. And but once is humble enough, then he is ready to accept Lord as the master. Otherwise, till now, the thought, the belief, the activity, the behavior, everything is as I am the proprietor. So there are two main points that Srila Prabhupada mentions in the verse. First is austerity is important or even necessary for advancing in a spiritual life. And the second point he mentions that if we don't accept the austerities voluntarily, then we are put into situations where we automatically practice austerity. So Srila Prabhupada in Krishna book says that false prestige due to the advancement of material prosperity is the great impediment toward the spiritual progress. Poverty-stricken men cannot become a poverty-stricken man cannot become fat by eating more and more, because he would be starving due to hunger, and on that account of being able to eat more and more than he requires, what happens is that, as I said, his senses are not very turbulent, and then he cannot become violent. So therefore, according to the Vedic culture, Brahmana, as the matter of their routine, they keep themselves in a poverty-stricken conditions to save themselves from false prestige and material opulence. And we see sannyasis in our movement, they don't possess anything. Their vow is so strict, they don't remain at one place more than 3 days, because possessing of anything leads to attachment. Staying at the one place leads to attachment, and slowly it can further downgrade to the level to the further downgrade to the having the ownership or the proprietorship or the enjoying tendency. Another advantage of a poverty-stricken condition, Prabhupada explains in Krishna book, is that a saintly person can easily enter in a poor man's room, and thus a poor man can easily take the advantage of a saintly person association. While one is very opulent, those people, they don't allow anyone to enter the house generally. And Prabhupada gives an example that opulent people or very rich people, they have, instead of having their door opens to the saintly people, they keep the board outside, that beware of dogs. So according to Vedic cultures, saintly people or saintly persons, basically they take the position of a mendicant. And so on the plea of begging, you know what they do? On the plea of begging, they enter, or they go to the house, they go to the house of a householder. And a householder who is usually has forgotten everything about the spiritual environment because he is so busy in maintaining his family affairs, he can be benefited when he associates with the saintly person. And then there is a great chance that a poor man become liberated through the association of the saint, because he makes that association available to himself. While the person who is puffed up in material opulences, they are bereft, because they are bereft of the association of the saintly people, of the devotees. So for them, there is no, for them they just enjoy basically in their opulences. And if we think of an example, then Narad Muni is a great example of this principle himself. Narad Muni himself is a great example of these principles, because we can see, we have heard in Canto 1 that in his past life, he was the son of a poverty-stricken maid servant. And he knew what the hunger was. But he was fortunate that he was able to serve the Bhakti Vedantis, the traveling mendicants who offer the remnants of his meals, to whom Narad Muni can serve very nicely. And from his own experience, he recalled that the greatest asset for the poor to have, the greatest assets for poor to have overreached is the receptive association of the great souls, which leads them toward the path of perfection. Shivram Swami, in his book Damodar Janani, actually explains it very nicely. Basically, he raised this question. So, if from the discussion it appears that it is easy for a poor man to progress on a path of spirituality. So, will the wealthy person ever get a devotee association? And in response to that, Maharaj explains that answer is that the prosperity is not an automatically spiritual disqualification. If wealthy people are devoid of pride, subsequently show respect to Vaishnavas, then they are eligible for mercy. Like the poor, devotees have no possessions. So when they go to home of a rich man, it is not to receive money, but to give mercy. However, if a rich men are so proud and arrogant, impervious to divine grace, devotees will neglect them in favor to those who are more qualified. So wealthy people can also receive a mercy, can also associate with the saintly people, provided they are not proud, provided they are receptive, provided they are congenial to spiritual progress. So as we discuss this, then it leads to a point that what leads to a point that what matters is the intent, the purpose behind the austerity that matters. If we look at the meaning of word austerity, the Sanskrit term that we hear in scriptures, Bhagavad Gita, Bhāgavatam, that Prabhupada translate tapa as austerity. The Sanskrit term is tapa. Cambridge Dictionary gives the meaning as that the condition of a living without unnecessary things and without comfort. And Srila Prabhupada, in the purport of 1.17.25, he actually very nicely adds one more point to the standard definition, or to the English definition, that austerity means to accept voluntarily things which may not be comfortable for the body, but conducive to spiritual realization. So it has to be conducive to the spiritual realization. That is very important. In our scriptures, we find many good and bad examples of people performing austerities, and how they achieved different destination, different results according to their intention. We are in Canto 10, and speaking of Canto 10, there are many examples, but one that came into my mind was actually Devaki and Vasudev. Devaki and Vasudev, they performed severe austerity in order to have Lord as their son. In chapter 3 of this canto, verse 34 and 35 actually describes that, what austerities they went through. It is said that they endured rain, wind, strong sun, heat, severe cold. They actually even practiced pranayama, eating only dry leaves, and for trees, leaves fallen from the trees. And by performing, and praying actually Lord, so ardently praying with the Lord. So seeing their austerities, actually Krishna get pleased, and then Krishna appears as their son. So before Krishna appears, Devaki and Vasudev in the previous slide, they were Prishni and Sutapa. So they performed austerities in Prishni and Sutapa, and then Krishna appeared as their son 3 times. So Prishni and Sutapa, he was Prishnigarbha, then they appeared in the next life as Aditi and Kashyap. Krishna become Lord Vaman, and then they become Devaki and Vasudev when Krishna appeared as Krishna himself. So that is one example. Another example is Dhruva Maharaj. We have heard his example every now and then, that he performed severe austerities in order to get the kingdom greater than his father. But Narad Muni there also guided him the right path, the right place and right thing to look for. And then he actually took the risk, performed the austerities, and at the end he could see Lord Vishnu. And then he expressed his prayer that, what I was looking is, I was searching for a piece of glass, but instead now I have found the most valuable jewel. So the intention, as I said, depending upon with what intention the austerity is performed, the results are accordingly. There are bad examples also, and when we think of a bad example, Hiranyakashipu is the first one that we can all think of. He performed such a severe austerities, but his intent was to become Vishnu. He was so envious of Vishnu that he wanted everyone to worship him instead of Vishnu. And he was so envious that he wanted to kill his own son. Another example is Vrikasur. Vrikasur, he was a demon, and he performed austerities to Lord Shiva to get a benediction from him. And the benediction was that whoever touches whoever head touches his hand, the person dies straight away. And Vrikasur wanted to actually try that benediction on Lord Shiva himself, who gave him that benediction. And then Lord Shiva had to run to Lord Vishnu, and then Vishnu saved Lord Shiva. So there are examples where people undergo severe austerities with the intention of gaining different things. But if the intention of the austerity is to gain self-accomplishment or to reinforce the ego, then the results are different, as I said. And in present days also, we find people performing such austerities. We might have heard people going on a fast for philanthropic causes. In India, it happens a lot. People going on Amar and Upvas for something, I don't know, maybe for certain caste to be uplifted, or people fasting for a material gain, that if you fast on certain days of a month, this good will happen in your life. So, or people performing austerities to and gain something to harm others, like witchcraft and things like that. So all these things are on a material platform, and they don't lead to Krishna. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita chapter 17 that penance is performed out of pride and for the sake of gaining respect, honor, and worship are said to be in the mode of passion. It is neither stable nor permanent. Penance is performed out of foolishness with a self-torture or to destroy or injure others is said to be mode of ignorance. So they don't result. So when we think of an austerity, we should not blindly perform anything without knowing the intent, without knowing the right way to perform the austerities. And the word here, when I was reading, when I was referring Bhagavad Gita, the word here came that, the penance is performed out of foolishness or with the self-torture. So the word came out of a self-torture. Now, as a Vaishnavas, we are not self-torment either. We accept material inconveniences with a purpose, like fasting on Ekadashi. But we just don't do austerity for the sake of tasting ourselves. Sometimes people do that. I've heard that, oh, let me try if I can fast. Maybe one can, if someone is on the spiritual path, one can maybe try with that intent, but it should eventually lead it should eventually lead with the intention to please Krishna. And as most things in a spiritual life, as I said, the correct way of performing austerity is the following the instructions of our previous acharya. And there are certain, Ekadashi is one example where devotees perform austerities. And when a devotee understands the value of such austerity, they can help. So when we understand the meaning behind it, when we understand the value, then we can follow them happily, because the devotees see that as an opportunity to make a faster spiritual advancement. It is just not a core. So they do it grudgingly. And this reminds me of bhajan from Bhakti Vinod Thakur. Madhavati Bhakati Janani Jatane Palana Kori Krishna Basati Boli Paramadare Kori. That means Madhava Tithi Bhakati Janani. Madhava Tithi means holy days like Ekadashi and Janmashtami. Those tithis that are very dear to Madhava are Bhakati Janani. They are mother of a devotion. And so those devotees who respect them, so yes, they are mother of a devotion for those devotees who respect them. And so let the holy place of Krishna's pastime places my worship and bless me. So Bhakti Vinod Thakur plays like that in his bhajan. So then in the purport, there is a topic about accepting voluntarily austerities. Now, if we think from a practical point of view, due to laws of karma or other influences, everyone in this material existence go through some sort of hardship. And different types of hardship or pain or discomforts are felt according to the conditioning that one carries. But that is, everything is sent by material nature. For example, for a poverty-stricken person, remaining hungry is an austerity. For a rich person, it might not be an austerity, but the rich person, because of his health reason, because of some other reason, he has to diet. He cannot eat certain things. So he is also not eating just for the different reason, while a poverty-stricken person is starving because of food not being available to them due to poverty. So materialistic people suffer due to past action under the influence of karma. But devotees, they have a different consciousness. They see everything in connection with Krishna. And yesterday Mataji was talking about Queen Kunti. Queen Kunti, if you look at her life, she had gone through so many difficulties, and despite of those difficulties, she was asking more and more difficulties. Why? Because in those difficulties, she could remember Krishna. So their thought process is that Krishna sends difficulties so that their false ego is curbed. And they develop the understanding that this material world is not such a happy place. It is like a bitter medicine that parents have to give to a deceased child. So what is the solution? Solution is that if we don't want to be forced to take the bitter medicine to cure our disease, then we have to accept it voluntarily. And the irony is that what we are trying to avoid, which is the medicine, is actually is the cure itself. So the austerity that we are trying to avoid desperately is the the disease that is the medicine that cures the disease. Srila Prabhupada in one of his room conversations was asked by his disciple Shyamananda Prabhu, and he asked Prabhupada that, our parents or many people in this material world, they are completely enamored by the material life. They don't want to go to austerity or bodily pain, but they still must because they are being forced by the material nature. And Prabhupada in the response is that is forced austerity. It is not good. Voluntarily austerity is good. Prabhupada continues further that if you don't undergo voluntary austerity, then you must be forced to go under forced austerity. And that is the difference between man and animal. He gives an analogy where animal cannot accept austerities, but humans can. When a person enters to a confectioner shop where there are so many nice stuff to eat, but if he doesn't have a money, then he has to retain himself. He doesn't have a choice. But if the cow comes, then what she does, or cow or any animal for that matter, what she does, she immediately pushes her mouth to those eatables, and then she gets the stick from the owner, which she'll have to tolerate. So animal cannot have the sense of austerity. They cannot go through the austerity. It is, but we human, with the developed intelligence, with the developed conscious, we can perform austerity. And then Prabhupada further says that, why people are not agreeable to the austerities doesn't make sense, because if we think of a moment, then it's chanting and dancing and eating feast. What's the problem in that? And if we think of that okay, Prabhupada made it sounded very easy that, chanting and dancing and feasting while people can't accept it. But due to our enjoying tendency, we find it difficult. And one can easily argue that in order to chant japa, we have to sacrifice our time. When we go to parikrama, which many devotees from here, they are in the parikrama. When we go to parikrama, we stay in the austere houses, or we eat unfamiliar food, or we basically live a minimalistic life, or to give a donation, we have to sacrifice our money, or to distribute books, we have to go outside in the heat or the rain. So as a devotee, we can easily argue, and that this thought came in my mind as that Prabhupada though made it sound, but it's not easy. It is difficult. It is just not only chanting, dancing, and feasting. So the response to that is the discomfort that we accept in order to serve Krishna, or discomfort that or the austerity that we go through in order to come close to Krishna, they don't go in vain, because it goes into our transcendental account. It goes in our credit. And not only that, if we are performing austerities sincerely, then material nature can go easy on us. Understanding that our difficulties can be reduced. So we are at the 7 o'clock mark. So I would just like to conclude here with two things. So in a conclusion, we can choose that if we want to accept a voluntary austerity, and while we can perform in our younger ages, control our senses, or eventually Krishna will put into the situation and we take a bitter medicine then. So that's something that we take home and introspect. Another thing that His Holiness Kadam Kanan Swami made a very nice point, that austerity in self is not a limb of bhakti. Nectar of Devotion describes 64 limbs of bhakti, and austerity is not mentioned amongst them. But what does it do? It gives us the strength to practice bhakti. It is not a spiritual itself, but lack of austerity will make us weak in our determination. So a certain amount of austerity is required as a preliminary activity to get some basic determination. And Maharaj further says in his blog that in the initial stage of devotional service, we are Kama Mishra Bhakta, and then we are slowly progresses towards the mode of goodness, but we are still not transcendental, beyond mode of goodness. So but we are in the transcendental process. So when we try to fix ourselves in mode of goodness, this interim stage of devotional service, as we practice more and more, will become more and more advanced. Basically, so the point is, devotional service is not a limb of a bhakti, but it makes our determination strong. It develops the sense of detachment. It brings us close to Krishna. It brings us the feeling of it puts into the place. It puts us on the platform of humility, and it brings us to the consciousness of thinking Krishna as the proprietor. So my apologies, I am 3 minutes over. If anyone has any question or correction or suggestions, please feel free to unmute and share. Okay. Granthrat Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Krishna willing, we'll all see you again tomorrow for Srimad Bhagavatam class.
Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Thank you.
Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mataji.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.